First half of October 1941. The Wehrmacht are technically the armed forces of the German Reich, an institution that, subject to international law, should only wage war against other armed forces. But if there was any doubt that they were institutionally and systematically involved in a war against humanity, such doubts are completely eradicated in October 1941. This is War Against Humanity, a subseries of World War II in real time. I'm Spartacus Olsson. At the end of September, 33,771 Jews were robbed, raped, and murdered at the Babi Yar ravine outside Kiev. That is not the end of Babi Yar's infamous story. For the remainder of the war, Babi Yar will continue to be a place where the Nazis kill and dispose of their victims. In the first half of October 1941, any Jews who have escaped and are still in Kiev are rounded up in smaller groups and shot right there. SS Order Police Officer Friedrich Jecken's men from Polizeiregiment Süd carry out 4 more massacres on October 1st, 2nd, 8th, and 11th. Several hundreds are murdered again. In the months to come, many more Jews, but also Roma and Soviet POWs will be killed in the ravine. But already now in October, the fate of millions of Red Army POWs is being decided elsewhere. As Indy has shown us in the weekly episodes, the Wehrmacht are capturing a staggering amount of Soviet POWs in their cauldrons every week. Upon capture, many are shot and killed on the spot by SS, Waffen-SS, or Wehrmacht soldiers. For example, in just 1 month, the 707th Infantry Division shoots 10,431 unarmed captives, soldiers, partisans, and civilians in Belarus. Those who aren't immediately executed are forced to walk to a transit camp, often hundreds of kilometers away, before being transported to a POW camp. Those who need medical care often do not get it. Those who are too injured, exhausted, dehydrated, or malnourished to continue walking are executed on the side of the road. Those who make it to the actual camps arrive in hell. Often there is no shelter. Most POW camps are just open fields with barbed wire around it, something which is not about to change even as winter is coming. Those who don't freeze to death will likely succumb to starvation as part of the hunger plan to starve to death most of the Slav population. At least those who don't have to do forced labor. On paper, in August 1941, the Germans set a ration of 2,200 calories per day for Soviet POWs who are put to work. Those who don't or can't work are meant to get nothing and starve immediately. But even for the forced laborers, a daily ration of 700 calories comes closer to what they actually get. On October 4th, the UKW orders several POW camps to transfer 26,000 Red Army soldiers to the SS to be put to work in concentration camps at Auschwitz, Mauthausen, Neuengamme, Flossenburg, Buchenwald, and smaller camps. They are put in their own sections called SS POW labor camps and are treated no better than in the regular POW camps. There, in the fall of 1941, the result of the hunger policy becomes tragically visible as many prisoners resort to eating grass, leaves, or in some cases, each other. And then there are the epidemics of diphtheria, typhoid, and other diseases raging through the camps, killing thousands on a daily basis. Red Cross attempts to bring in aid are rejected. Instead, those infected are shot to try to contain the spread. During the last 10 days of October 1941, nearly 46,000 Soviet POWs will die in German camps in Poland alone. In November, 83,000 more will perish in the same camps. Reichspropaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels writes in his diary about his visit to a POW camp on October 3rd. Here and there, the prisoners have killed and eaten their own comrades. Russians require a different measure of judgment than Europeans. They remain savages, only to be compared to animals. Historian Alexander Dalin describes exactly how disingenuous this statement is. German policy had caused, or at the very least had tolerated, the degradation of the prisoners and then held it up to its own people as something to be reviled, as something typical of a subhuman who could never be like Western man. But starvation and enslavement are not the only lethal projects in which Soviet POWs are being used. We've already mentioned how hundreds of Soviet POWs were killed in experimental gassing with Cyclone B, but the list of examples goes on and on, with things like medical experiments and being used as live test dummies for ammunition. The Nazis themselves claim that they don't have any obligation to care for the Red Army soldiers in their POW camps, since the Soviet Union has not ratified the 1929 Geneva Convention on Prisoners of War. That is legal nonsense, as under international law, the German treatment of the Soviet prisoners of war is illegal, regardless of who has ratified the convention or not. It's a thinly veiled excuse for a coldly calculated policy to execute yet another mass murder of genocidal proportions. In the first 6 months of the war, 2 million Soviet POWs die in German captivity. By the end of the war, roughly 60% of the Soviet prisoners of war in German camps will be dead. And now, in October, there are soon to be many more people in the hands of the Nazis in the East. On October 10, head of the SS Sicherheitsdienst and deputy governor of the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, Reinhard Heydrich, announces the deportation of the first 5,000 Jews from Prague. On the 14th, SS Order Police Chief Kurt Dalug signs the first order for removal of Berlin's Jews to the east. From now on, trains with Jews will leave regularly from Germany, Austria, Slovakia, and Czechia to camps and ghettos in the Baltic states, the Generalgouvernement in Poland, and Belarus. But Heydrich is about to expand his murderous activities even more, though. He is now considering sending Jews directly to concentration camps originally meant for communist activists, like the Majdanek concentration camp, which just became operational on the 1st. He also opines in his notes that gypsies due for evacuation could be brought to Stahlecka in Riga, whose camp is set up on the pattern of Sachsenhausen. And while Heydrich ponders future murders, his subordinates continue carrying out the ones he has already ordered. On October 6th in Stanislavov, SS Hauptsturmführer Hans Krüger steps in front of his men of the Sicherheitsdienst, Vienna Police, Ukrainian Volunteers, and Police Battalion 133, and announces that a difficult task lies ahead of us, the extermination of the Jews as ordered by the Führer. After a test run the same day, more than 10,000 Jewish men, women, and children are shot 6 days later. With this massacre, the mass liquidation of Jews in the Generalgouvernement in Poland begins. Further east in Dnipropetrovsk, Friedrich Wieke personally oversees the killing of roughly 30,000 remaining Jews in the city. 70,000 managed to escape the town before the Germans arrived. This massacre is part of a protracted killing campaign by Wieke and his men, in which roughly 100,000 people are murdered throughout October 1941. We have seen that while 2 new ghettos have been established in Vilnius in early September to incarcerate 40,000 Jews in total, Jews were also being murdered here in parallel. Already on October 1st, one of the 2 ghettos is dissolved. It is Yom Kippur, one of the major holidays of the Jewish faith. The German forces take a few thousand Jewish men without labor designations out of the camp to the killing fields of Ponary, where they are shot. By mid-October, all 15,000 inhabitants of the small ghetto have been killed. Anyone imprisoned in the large ghetto with labor duties will be moved there instead. The remaining 11,000 Jews of the large ghetto stay there, for now. But more and more Jews are now coming into the Nazi sphere of control. As Indy has covered in the weekly episodes, the Germans have now launched a secondary attack on Moscow, Operation Typhoon. It is now that it becomes clear, beyond any doubt, that the Wehrmacht also understands their part in this imaginary war with the Jews, which they somehow managed to use to justify to themselves murdering the most innocent among us. On the 10th, commander of the 6th Army, Feldmarschall Walther von Reichenau, issues the order for the conduct of the troops in the eastern region. Now, von Reichenau is a radical figure, flirting with Hitler and his anti-Semitic ideas already before 1933. Though he protested the shooting of Jews during the Polish campaign in 1939, he has now become an active part of the Holocaust. It is he who coordinates closely with Einsatzgruppe C and the perpetrators of the Babi massacre of Sonderkommando 4A under SS Colonel Paul Blobel. His new order requires all his subordinates to support the necessity of the hard but just atonement against Jewish subhumanity. Although von Reichenau issues the order, it soon becomes the rule for all German Army Command of the East. The order is reproduced and circulated by the OKH and Commander of Army Group South, Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt. Others, like Hermann Hott, commanding the 17th Army, and Erich von Manstein, commanding the 11th Army, issue similar orders for their own troops. In practice, it only formalizes what the Wehrmacht is already doing, support the Einsatzgruppen and order police as they round up and shoot Jewish inhabitants in village after village, town after town. An Austrian policeman in one of those death squads writes to his wife about his experience and how he rationalizes his acts as if murdering babies is part of a war on communism. During the first try, my hand trembled a bit as I shot, but one gets used to it. By the 10th try, I aimed calmly and shot surely at the many women, children, and infants. I kept in mind that I have 2 infants at home whom these hordes would treat just the same, if not 10 times worse. The death that we gave them was a beautiful, quick death compared to the hellish torments of thousands and thousands in the jails of the GPU. Infants flew in great arcs through the air, and we shot them to pieces in flight before their bodies fell into the pit, into the water. This man partakes in the massacre in Mahiu on the 2nd and 3rd of October. 2,273 men, women, and children are shot. On the 19th, another 3,726 are shot. So as October begins, the mass murder of Jews in the occupied Soviet Union continue. More Jews are now being transported into the Generalgouvernement in Poland, where the massacres have also begun. Millions of Red Army POWs are facing starvation, disease, murder, and torture by their German captors. Meanwhile, other crimes are committed in the Far East. There's now a Chinese offensive along the Yangtze front. To bring the Chinese advance at Yichang to a halt on October 8th to 10th, the Imperial Japanese Army deploy roughly 300 gas-laden bombs on Chinese positions. Most of the Chinese soldiers are not equipped with proper protective gear, clothing, or gas masks. Some wear sandals or no shoes at all. 1,000 Chinese soldiers are wounded and 600 die in the attack. So far, gas has not yet been used on the battlefields in Europe, but it has been used to kill Jews and psychiatric patients, and mobile gas vans and lethal tests using Zyklon B have been performed on Soviet POW. On October 13, 1941, Reichsführer SS Heinrich Himmler orders SS and police leader in the Lublin district, Odilo Globocnik, to set up a new gassing facility. Later in October, he finds his location. It is on the border between the Nazi divisions into the Lublin district and the district of Galicia, conveniently near the railroad junction at Ravaruska on the highway between Lublin and Lviv. The camp will be erected within walking distance from the picturesque railway station of the calm rural village, Belzec. Today in 2020, there are many who might not know why that place name is so ominous. If we don't remind ourselves in every generation, it can be forgotten, and the chances that this happens again will increase. For us here at Time Ghost, this makes it all the more important to document these events in new formats for current and future generations. Become a part of this effort by joining the Time Ghost Army on patreon.com or timeghost.tv. Never forget.